Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chinese injector test showdown. I was contacted on Instagram by Snake Eater Performance to test these obviously Siemens Deca body cloned Chinese injectors. He makes no claims that, they're the greatest thing ever, but he does want to create a middle ground, which I talk about all the time, which would be incredible, a cheaper, larger injector that works well enough to put in cars, because obviously if you've seen the other video I did where all of these Chinese injectors have been terrible that we've tested. They're known to be very bad, and I'm like, man, it'd be awesome if someone could find, obviously China's capable of doing really good work, just depends on who you're working with and the quality control and a lot of other things. And then after all is said and done, is the price point worth it? Is that going to do any good? Are you going to be able to make any money? Is it going to be worth your time? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I love to see something good. I've said many times in between the decap or the 210, because those are just shining stars right now for budget. They're great. And I had Snake Eater Performance reach out to me, and he wanted me to test these guys out. So I said, hey, send the 1500s, because, the 80s... they're pretty much covered. His are going to be cheaper than Siemens Decas, but we have to, it remains to be seen if they're all very good. And initial testing is very good, actually. And I had him send me a set of 1500s, and I got them the other day, and obviously you can see here, they come with the EV1 or the Delphi square connector, and they look good. I couldn't see anything obviously wrong with them, so we decided to throw them right on the workbench and give them a workout. And I'll show you real quick. These are the ones that I tested from another guy that were not great at all, which you can see here. They're all over the place on a static test. And there's two main important tests for injectors. And one is static and one is dynamic. And what you have to consider is the static test means that they're just being held at a certain rate or wide open. So a static test, say you're holding the injector at 50% and it flows a certain amount, or you're holding it wide open and it flows a certain amount. That's great and all if they're even on a static test, but the issue here is if your car is hardly ever using 100% of the injector all the time. It's in a varying wave of up and down. So what you want is your dynamic test to be in a close percentage. Obviously you want to see what the injector flows on right here. They have to be even for amount as, for what they're capable of as total flow. But what you want to see is after a static test that they're close to, because as your car accelerates and makes power up and down, especially turbo car, 100 to 600 horsepower coming in and out has to be pretty accurate. So you do the dynamic test and the static test, and you make a decision after all of that. So these are the ones that did not do well at all. And then this is the Snake Eater ones, which are doing really good. We did a bunch of tests. The first test we did was what's called a, just to see if they leak. What you do is, right here, you pressurize the rail with like 60 pounds and you see if they leak out of the tips without flowing, with no electronics, because a lot of the crappy China injectors will leak right out of the tip and it'll fill your cylinder, and that is bad news bears. You will fill a cylinder, hydrolock it when you go to start it, or it'll just be constantly weeping. See, if you're trying to get a low pulse width out of a large injector and it's always weeping extra in there, you can't tune around that. There's a mechanical problem. So his did great. The one did bubble a little bit when we hit it with pressure, but I think it was dirty from manufacturing or something like that, because after we flowed and tested everything, there was zero issues. And we'll go through here. On a static test, this is just static wide open, they are really tight. And on 43 psi, they flowed 1320 cc's, and they were like dead on. They did excellent. So that is great. They were within like 2%, really tight. So they definitely are 1500s at 60 psi or 58 or 4 bar, which is what almost all of the people watching this video are going to use it in a Chevy stock application. So that's what you're going to run them at. They are 1500 cc. The bench my buddy had didn't go over 55 pounds. It's just a little bench tester. So that's where we're at. They're definitely good. They're 140-ish pounds. So spray pattern looks good. You can't see the pattern in this particular clip. What I'll do is I'll cut to some static tests quick, show those, and then they flowed within, I mean, this is not great, but it's not awful, and they're good enough to put in a car to test, with caution. But this is awesome because he's getting somewhere with these, and these are just a grab bag set of 8. He didn't match these. They're not ringers. This is basically like an overview of what he's getting, and these are prototype. These aren't even like completed ones or known good or a larger batch of successful ones. This is like his prototype initial test set he got from them, he said. So this is really good to see them within 8% on a dynamic test. So if he gets a set of 800 of these and he matches them and sells them, they're going to be excellent. If he can narrow down to about 3%, that's incredible. Your motor isn't even as tight as 3% on each cylinder, so that would be awesome. That's what he plans on doing. What's neat is the original price point, he wants to be around 200 bucks, is what he said to me. So it'll be neat to see if he can adhere to that, because he plans on selling just under 200 for an unmatched set, which is grab bag like this. And you're either going to test them yourself or you're going to understand that they could be upwards of 8% off, and you have to tune conservatively, or you don't give a shit, whatever that ends up being for you. And then the other set he's going to match, and obviously that's going to add to the price, but they would probably still be under retail for Deca 80s. But anyway, we will cut to some of the dynamic testing and I will explain what's going on there. Here is one of like 100 static flow tests we did during the day to see how they do wide open. And the cylinders are kind of small here, so we had to do some math, and this was a shorter test, but this is how all the longer tests came out also. Pretty tight. So that was they're tight. Now, as I learned the machine here, I was messing around with settings, so figuring everything out and giving this is a slight dynamic test where it beats them up pretty good and then it ramps in between the pulse widths, so it hits it pretty hard and then fans it up and down, and you can see the pattern is good through that spread. And we did end up running a bunch of longer tests. I'll show those quick, but what's nice to see is the consistency across the pulse widths, a good spray pattern through the pulse widths, and we changed the pressure from like 20 to 55 psi with all similar results. So they were doing great across all pressures and pulse widths. Okay, well, here is the longer dynamic test that I was trying to learn how to use, that I got a pretty good handle on. And what this does is it does 4 pulses for every 50 RPM in steps from 350 RPM to 6,000 RPM. So it really runs them through the ringer as far as low pulse width and high pulse width and fast, and just you get a really good dynamic rate at the end of this. And I put the 2 farthest apart, like the ones that were 7 or 8%, in the 2 middle cylinders, so you can see the difference. And 8 is not terrible. 3 would be really, really good, but you have to consider that I would not have even thought about installing injectors like this, and now they're flowing within 8% on a dynamic test. At the point they are at now, I would test them in my own vehicle or a friend's vehicle and just keep my eye on them. I want to run them for about a month and then take them back out and reflow them and see if they are still consistent after some use. It's incredible to see how bad some of the other sets were and how close to, perfect these are. They're doing really good as far as the manufacturing from whoever he's getting them from. He definitely did his homework, and I can't wait to see, how this pans out. Now, like I said earlier, these are the most dramatic differences out of the injectors I could find, so I put those next to each other. The outside ones are really close. The inside ones are that 8% max spread. So if he sells match sets, these will be excellent. So, closing thoughts on these injectors from Snake Eater Performance. If he continues to deliver this type of injector and they are flowing that closely, I mean, previously these Chinese injectors I would only purchase to do some testing just to laugh at them. So as far as they are right now, I would put them in a car for testing, and hopefully soon they're good enough and they prove to have some longevity, and this is something that we can go, wow, they made it. I mean, it's 90-some% there. If he can keep the product quality up and they keep working this well and we don't have any long-term issues, he says, obviously he's going to warranty them. This is something he really wants to see come into fruition, so he's going to try his best to get this stuff to work. I mean, if you're smart enough, you realize that all of these companies get these injectors made in China. They just have better quality control, so that's what you're looking at, and he's there. He's getting there. I mean, it's really close, so I'm going to test them. You guys can feel free to reach out to him. I don't know how many products he has right now, or if he can even sell them. I believe that these were prototypes, pre-production runs that he sent to me. He wasn't even sure, how they would do. Well, he had flowed a bunch, and as far as total junk ones he received, these were very good. So he was like, I think they're ready. Could you help me out? Blah, blah, blah. So in closing, I would run these in a car cautiously for now, and we will see how they pan out over the next couple months. If you guys want to try them and let me know what you think, or do some independent testing on your own, I would like to flow them again, obviously after they're in my friend's car, see how they do in the car, see how they tune, a bunch of other things, and we will keep updating as we go. So that's the update on these guys for now. They're looking surprisingly good. It blew my mind when they didn't just completely leak in the rail. Me and my friend, who owns the flow bench, were like, wow, they don't leak like a piece of shit. we were impressed. So let me know what you guys think of them. Throw down some comments, any other tests you can think of. If you think I'm retarded, if you think this is a bad idea, if you think it's a great idea, you'll say whatever the hell you want anyway. So let me know what you think, and that's it. They did really well. I'm kind of blown away.